All right, Ryan, let's get started. So we're gonna give everybody like a crash course since this is the beginning. This is the first part one. We had part one a couple of weeks ago, but there was so many people we couldn't cover it. So we're doing it over again. But since I hate repeating information, we added some new information, but it's still basic information. Now, when we get to part three, that's when we start going into the math part, threat harmonics, all the stuff that's really complicated, but it's extremely important, and you'll never look at the world the same way again. So, in the beginning, whether we're talking about narcissists, sociopaths, or psychopaths, in general, unless you're a researcher, the name doesn't matter. What we're looking at is people that have a negative influence on their environment. They are essentially an arachnid, an insect. They are a predator against thy fellow person. So, whatever phrase we want to use, let's not get caught up in the minutia. It's it's their MO, their modus operandi. It's the fact that if you include these people in your lives, they have nothing for you but destruction. Next slide. So, first thing we have to learn is the law of progressive intelligence. And what that essentially means in this world is the more somebody engages themselves in any activity, in general, the better they get at it. So, when we're talking about sociopaths, manipulators, all these individuals, if they're good at it, they have been doing this for a long time. When, as a criminologist, you can start noticing this type of behavior in kids as early as 7. I came across a lot of 7 and 8 year olds that were just preparing themselves to be serial killers. And that's why we go to this movie right here. If you ever saw this movie, it's called The Good Son with Macaulay Culkin, and he was essentially a young serial killer. And if you really want to see what that false empathy looks like, I suggest watching this movie because it's extremely accurate to how it actually happens in the real world. And I've sat down with a number of young kids that were this cold. Often when you're dealing with young people, that are going down that route of sociopathic and psychopathic behavior, you'll notice them starting to attack animals. They especially attack cats and rabbits. So they'll get used to hurting cats and rabbits, and that's them getting ready to hurt an adult one day. The other thing you'll notice is that they will have a fascination with school shooters often and a fascination with just the concept of tearing down society. So when I work with certain parents, especially in the past, these behaviors had to be identified and dealt with very quickly. I see in the comment section, yep, fire setting as well in bedwetting. Bedwetting at an inappropriate age. So this is somebody that's bedwetting on purpose just to make things difficult for their parents or the people around them. So perfect. All right, let's go next. So what's really important is if that we keep finding ourselves in these problematic situations, we need to understand the pattern recognition of victimology. And victimology is why does someone target someone to be a victim? Because it's not random. Every study that has ever been done on predatory humans have shown that people look for certain traits. One of them is proximity. So, what is your proximity to problematic places? A problematic place could be a drug den, it could be a park. Parks are very dangerous, especially if you're going there late at night. I almost get anxiety when I see people just walking around parks and it's 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night. I mean, I always have at least one gun on me, and I rarely go to parks because it's so easy for somebody to jump out and attack, especially at night. And that's because of something called game trails, which we're going to talk about later. Next is physicality. In general, problematic people, manipulators, sociopaths, they don't attack people who are stronger than them. They don't attack people that they believe are physically and psychologically strong. They're going to do like any other predator, like a lion, crocodile, wild dog, whatever. They're going to pick out people that have vulnerabilities. And that's why in a couple events from now, we're going to do an event called target hardening, which is the concept of making yourself stronger. Stronger so that you send the cues to the people around you, don't mess with me. It's amazing. I loved that course when I was in Homeland Security. It was extremely beneficial to a lot of women because afterward, people started reading them like they were a dangerous person, even if she was only a 5'4" person. The other one is psychology. So we're going to get into how manipulators hijack the psychology of other people. So, just in case people don't know this, your reticulated activating system in your brain is what you notice. And what often happens to somebody that's been a victim of problematic people for a very, very, very long time, they don't notice the traits or the manipulation that has happened in their life. They don't notice it because they're just so used to it. And they become like colorblind to it. It's like having cologne or perfume right next to your neck. After a while, you just get used to it. So it's often very hard to bring someone into the light so that they can see the amount of manipulation that has happened in their life. All right, next slide. Okay, so game trails are really important. So in there are certain places, again, this is very common, when you're watching like again, African predatory animals, Australian predatory animals, all that stuff, where prey items move in predictable patterns. This is where they graze at, this is where they drink at, where this is where they sleep at. So lions, hyenas, jackals, they will post up in these areas. And just like this, humans do the exact same thing. Perfect example, one of the most dangerous places people go on a daily basis is nightclubs and clubs in general past like 1 a.m. So that is the time when a sociopath or problematic person, I guarantee, if you could see the inside of the minds of the people around you while you're in a bar or a club past 1 o'clock, you wouldn't be there because you would be horrified by the actual thought process of probably 1 out of 5 people in there. Just I've said this before, but if you've never heard this before, 50% of all victims of crime are intoxicated when they're victimized, and 50% of all predatory people have alcohol in their system. So one of the most likely indicators of whether somebody is problematic or a good victim is how often they drink, and do they drink to the point where they are unable to control their actions. Okay, next slide. So this is extremely important for understanding the cycle of what it's like to be with a toxic person. So I remember I got out of school and I thought I was doing well for myself. So I went out and bought some fancy goldfish. And I bought this big old tank. I got the cool looking goldfish. I didn't know what I was doing. So I put all the goldfish in perfectly clear water. But what happened is they didn't thrive and they all eventually died because fancy goldfish have to have a certain amount of bacteria and toxicity in the water or they don't flourish. And what happens is if we come from these backgrounds, whether it's childhood, whether it's a bad boyfriend, bad girlfriend, bad boss, what often happens is we get used to toxic people. We get used to toxic behaviors. And then if you put that person into a normal, healthy relationship and they haven't gone through that healing process, they don't thrive. They end up bringing the toxicity in the relationship because that's all they know. What happens with our brain is here to keep us alive. But if you don't control it, it's not going to keep you happy. So what it's going to do is keep the pattern that has kept you alive so far. So if that pattern was an abusive parent, an abusive sibling, an abusive boyfriend, an abusive girlfriend, your brain will replay that like a bad movie that you won't shut off. So that's why it's so important to notice these patterns and take control of our minds. And this is the saddest part. So many of us are going to have to become the parent we never had. We're going to have to get the kind of love that we didn't have growing up, or we didn't see mirrored growing up, or the love that we thought we deserved but we never got. And this is going to be so hard, but this is the key to your salvation, is that fact. You're going to have to become the parent you never were. I mean, the parent that you never received. And if you don't, then you'll never become the parent you could be, and the parent to take care of you yourself. Next slide. So this is something that we're going to talk more about, but when I'm profiling people, I want to see the world that they see. This is very difficult when with online dating because online dating doesn't allow you the ability to norm someone. And norming is watching somebody's pattern before they know you're watching them. When you're online dating or when you're meeting somebody for the first time and there's no connection to your larger community, this person doesn't know your brother, this person doesn't know your friends. It's a lot easier for them to be a fake version of themselves. But what it's really hard to do is to backtrack. If you saw one of my videos I posted on YouTube for the channel, it is people lie in generally in chronological order. It's really hard to lie backwards because it's hard to keep track of the story and keep track of how you're appearing to the other person. So what I do and what I've done for years, especially in interviews, especially with human trafficking cases, because there was so much math involved, was I would have somebody explain themselves backwards. And that's very, very difficult. And it's as easy as this. So let's take Al Pacino's Scarface, that movie. Typical, this is a very sociopathic character in that movie. I would ask them, so do you like Scarface? Did you like that movie? And if they said yes, cool. All right. Okay, can you break down what about the character of Tony Montana did you like? And then you allow them to tell the story of why they like the movie because a lot of times we don't get into the point of what somebody notices. We just kind of it's very easy to just be talking to someone, but we're not gleaming how does that person view things. So for instance, when I looked at crimes, especially gang violence in Detroit and gang violence in Chicago, an alarming amount of youth grew up watching Scarface like it was a freaking Bible, as in that character was success. That person was attractive, they had money, blah, 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 but they didn't pay attention to how Tony Montana destroyed everything around him. And this is very important. Somebody has to explain to you what does success look like in their life. Because if you have a definition of success and they have a different definition of success, that whole opposites attract thing, yeah, you're not going to track. You're just going to go right off the rails. Next, the movie Joker. This is again a very problematic character. And this ties back into one of the techniques that people disassociate themselves from their crimes is they'll say the environment was terrible. You know, society made me do this. Society is going to bring out who you really are. It's like if I give you $10 million, that money is not going to create a new character for you. It's going to bring out who you really are. And this movie, I found the movie entertaining, but that character blamed everyone for his problems except himself. And in every scenario, we can always be the hero or we can always be the villain. It's just a decision of what you think is important. Some of the best criminologists, criminal investigators I've ever met, came from terrible backgrounds. I mean, I came from Detroit. I can't almost all my friends growing up are either dead or in prison. But that wasn't an excuse for me. I could have turned to crime or I could have decided to change it. And we are always offered that chance. And understanding that that chance is always open to us is really fulfilling. All right, next, Wolf of Wall Street. So this movie became the playbook for the modern scammer. So the pump and dump scams, the crypto scams, all these think and grow rich scams, a lot of them, if you look at who they want to become, who what does success look like to them, it was this character from Wolf of Wall Street with the drugs, with the money, with the models, with the drugs, all of that stuff. So it's very important also to just sit back and ask somebody if you want to be successful, how what are you willing to compromise in order to be successful? Like if you get $100 million, but you get it from ripping people off, is that okay? And a large percent of the population, a larger percent than people realize, I think probably up to 10 to 15% of the population would say yes. They would say it's their fault for being tricked. And they can sleep well at night because they say, you know what? The world is predatory and they were just a predator in that situation. So when you watch somebody that does that, that doesn't have an individual who can scam and rip other people off and still feel good about themselves, I would never connect that person to my life because the brain doesn't create barriers. Once you open that bridge, it opens it for all kind of other stuff. So that behavior will not be isolated. It will drift into other parts of their character, whether it's with the way they raise their children, the way they treat their spouse, etc., etc. All right, next. Now,
Okay.
hold on. One thing, I
Yep,
just see
go
a
ahead.
question right there. It says, "Why do they do what they do?" This is often hard because we want closure with people. One of the things I do, and this has helped me when I was working with so many crimes, because I've had so many, people tell me some horrible things that have happened to them. They do what they do because that's exactly what they want to do. I feel like we waste a lot of time trying to understand people who are not worth our time understanding. They're not for you. It's almost like going to a bad restaurant, like no offense, but Popeyes. Like if you go to Popeye's Chicken or something and you try to figure out why the service is bad, I personally think that's a waste of our time as people. We should just go somewhere else. It's not their whatever reason they give you is no reason to continue even thinking about them. And this is hard, but they are a false person. They are a ghost. They are a creature of the night trying to pretend that they're human, and they're not. What they do has benefited them throughout their life, so it's a pattern. Sometimes it's a chemical imbalance, other times it's just people want things, but they don't want to work to get them. So this is going to go into what's called the hedonistic calculus, and I'll go ahead and write that down because the hedonistic calculus is how someone decides whether they're going to go into crime or not. And I'll write that down and I'll make
Mhm.
sure in a future show I explain the hedonistic calculus. But it's all you now, Ryan.
Thank you, Terrance.
You're welcome.
So, part of finding or creating, should I say, better relationships is not only learning how to stay away from problematic people and therefore problematic relationships and to knowing what to avoid, but knowing the signs of what's good for us and then going down that route and learning how to cultivate it and nurture it. So when we're talking about better relationships or the ACE relationship method and the ACE relationship community, the other side of it is finding genuine partners. And finding genuine partners requires genuine connections. And everything that I'm talking about here that is going to be something that you want to look for in somebody on the same side, if it's missing from somebody, it doesn't necessarily mean they're problematic. It could be, but they may not be who you're looking for, meaning that you're not getting out of it what you should be getting out of it or what you might deserve to get out of a relationship. So, one of the first things that tricks us is when people give us attention. When somebody gives us attention, it does not mean that the intention is implied. Meaning, just because somebody seems interested in us or tells us that they like us and gives us their full attention and wants to know more about us, that does not mean that what they're saying is true and what that they have good intentions for us. It means they're trying to get information about you. That's all it means. That's all that we are able to when first meeting somebody and they give us attention is they want my attention and they want to know about me. Why? No idea. And that's one of the things that Terrance was saying when we were talking about nightclubs. That nightclubs are one of the most dangerous places to be, especially after 1 a.m. Because if you could see how people think and how people profile others to find victims, if we could look from the outside looking in, it starts to become very clear how they have a system of looking at somebody and thinking, can I find their weak points? Are they gullible? Are they perhaps a little bit tipsy? How easy is it going to be to get information from them? How easy is it going to be to manipulate them? And what we see when we're in this situation is simply just someone coming up to us with charisma. And we talked about it in a previous thing that charisma is not chemistry. So and sorry, yeah, charisma is not chemistry, and chemistry is not compatibility. So what we're looking for is not the fact that somebody gives us attention, but the intention behind their attention for us. What are the reasons? Why are they trying to get information from me? Why are they coming up to me? We hear a lot of, very fluffy, light love stories about people meeting for the first time and carrying things forward. But if we have a plan for what our future is going to be, then we need to be doing things with intention, and we need to be questioning both our intention and the intention of anyone else that we are getting involved with. So when somebody starts giving us attention, and we have decided or we have verified that somebody's intention is not only pure and is not only good, but good for us, meaning it matches their intention of their long-term goals, matches our long-term goals, we don't stop calling it a situationship and call it a relationship until there is a clear declaration of commitment. This this is not something that is simply implied. It is said and agreed between people that you have the same intentions to move forward in a committed relationship in the same ethical manner for the same goals, and you are willing to sacrifice or do the same moral things in order to reach those said goals. One of the biggest things that breaks people up is unmet and unsaid expectations. So if there is no clear expectation to build this from the ground up, that we are exclusive or however we would like to be, we agree to it, and here are the terms, and this is how we're going to move forward, and we want somebody else to assume what we want, it's the quickest way to failure. Because I cannot treat somebody a certain way or work towards goal a certain way if I don't even know what their goals are. If I don't know how they like to be treated, if I don't know what works for them or who they are, there's no way to work on it. And unfortunately, a lot of people socially, culturally, kind of just let themselves fall into a relationship. And oftentimes, falling into that relationship is a relationship of convenience, the fact that we see them all the time, or they make us feel good. And perhaps months or years later, there might be a verbal commitment of some kind, or when it's time after you're dating for 2 3 4 years to sit down and talk about what the next step is. But by that point, because the relationship did not start with a declaration, oftentimes when we let ourselves get involved with somebody for a period of time because it's simple or easy for us, or we have what we believe is chemistry, but it isn't true compatibility, we end up negotiating our non-negotiables. We had an idea for the future, and we did not put our foot down at the beginning and say, thank you, next. I'm going to look at the next person because they don't agree on my non-negotiables. Instead, we forsake our own plans for somebody that seems convenient to us that we like. But if we have an idea for a future, we have a destination, we need to plan and execute that plan. Otherwise, all the ideas that we have, if we don't start out the right way, especially with a declaration, a mutual clear understanding of how to move forward, then we cannot make a plan to get to a destination when we have no idea what that destination should be. So that's something really important that Terrance and I talk about is understanding who you are and the type of person that would be good for you and learning how to evaluate it. But more important than any of it is starting a relationship the right way with a clear, understood mutual declaration of commitment towards the same long-term goals. Which leads us into this next idea. And I touched on it a little bit. Are they with you or do they just happen to be with you? Meaning, is somebody committed to you and that long-term shared goal? Or are they passing the time because it's convenient for them? So the reason we put this photo in here of Captain Mary is from Infinity Wars. And if you're unfamiliar with the scene, I'm going to explain it just very briefly. There's a moment in time where the superheroes are getting their butts kicked by Thanos. And there's a point where help does not seem like it's coming. And the numbers in Thanos's army are increasing and increasing and increasing. And you've got Captain America who instead tightens his shield and gets ready for war with an understanding that I am with my fellow superheroes. I am with the cause I'm about to fight on, and I'm not turning back because I'm standing on this ground. I'm standing on my moral ground, and this person needs to be defeated no matter what. You know what? I'm willing to lay my down life for it, and I'm not going to hesitate. He's with them. Somebody who just happened to be with them would tuck tail and run. In the that when the going gets tough, they ask themselves, why the hell am I here anyway? You know what? I don't need to deal with this. And they run away. So if we don't have a clear declaration and we don't have extremely clear goals, reasons, and evidence for why we are spending time and effort with somebody, hopefully building our long term dream, then we have no idea whether we're wasting our time or not. And it is so freeing to have that when somebody is in front of you, you can clearly understand who they are and you are happy to keep going through the struggles. So we need to keep asking ourselves and even ask ourselves this about ourselves towards perhaps a potential partner or current partner is, am I really with them when the going gets tough, when things get difficult? Is it really because of their character and who they are? Or is it perhaps about what they have and how they make me feel, or if it's just convenient for me? And we need to keep a very close lookout for other people who are with us for a shared goal, no matter what. Because problematic people, if we're going to, if the people who are with others just because they happen to be with them, they can be problematic or they can just be, carefree, kind of selfish people. But regardless, that's not going to help us if we're just convenient for them. Because when it's inconvenient for them, they go away, and all of our hard work is lost. So one of the ways to test this is if something is just a little inconvenient for the other person, but may make you happier, may make your life easier, are they okay with being slightly inconvenienced? Or do they have a rigid stance of no matter what, they cannot be convenienced, and instead you have to negotiate and you have to give up what's important to you for them? And if they need to give it up, do they start pulling away or not? And it could be on the smallest of things, like what restaurant you go to. You might have a different idea of what your culinary favorite is. Your favorite might be sushi. Their favorite might be Italian food. Is it possible for them to get a little bit uncomfortable? Or do they kind of start to pull away? Very, very good questions. Now, I'm using something very simple, but we can get into more complicated examples later. Some really good green flags comes from this book called Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. And the idea of creating, establishing, building a wonderful, healthy relationship is basically being a kingmaker or a queen maker, being somebody who uplifts the people around you, not necessarily for your own sake, but for their sake. So in a relationship, both sides need to be committed to helping the other person be the best possible person they can be. Meaning we are serving or giving somebody else in order to serve and grow our own relationship, not simply looking to see what I can take from the other person. Because if you have two people who are just trying to take from each other, it becomes like hoarding money without the ability to spend it. It doesn't matter how much you take from the other person, but your shared goal isn't being built. Both people are being selfish. What really happens is instead of negotiating and giving up certain things for the other person, is collaboration, serving each other to serve the relationship. And so there are some basic fundamental things that we can look for in a person to understand whether they can help us do that and get there the same way. And one of those is through these five traits. The talent magnet, somebody who is encouraging towards the strengths of other people will attract people with talent. Not only do they attract people with talent, but they pay attention to what other people's strengths truly are. And that takes a level of attention and discernment and awareness of the people around them, but also the true interest of others. So if somebody tends to attract the talented people around them, it means that they are actually aware and understand and give value to it. So I would love to be with somebody who's a talent magnet because I can feel like they notice my quirks, they notice what I'm good at, and they encourage it, even if it's something that may be uncommon or unconventional. The next one is the liberator. A liberator is somebody who can help question somebody's or not question someone, but question an issue enough to tell people and help them notice what the true problem is and liberate them from systemic issues. Meaning, if everyone gives in to peer pressure and they don't understand that peer pressure and simply going with the flow of every day we go see the same type of movie, we go to the same bar every night, we do the same things that don't help us move forward in our goals. Is this person able to show and teach people how to move to the next step? So, is this somebody who can not only see a long term goal, but actually help you get there? So, can they see what's good in you, the value, and do they know how to cultivate it? The next part is a challenger. Somebody who's a challenger, like what I said earlier, similar to liberation, is do they know and do they constantly challenge, not to be difficult, but in order to improve the people around them? So if Terrance or another friend comes to me and says, I'm having trouble with my car. I don't know what's going on. It's always broken. And I take it to the same mechanic. And 2 weeks later, I got to take it back. Right. A liberator and challenger is somebody who's going to look closely at that problem and be able to help them understand that there may be a few problems here. What is it? Could it be that perhaps the car isn't a good car to start with? Or maybe we need to look at a different mechanic. Or perhaps you drive your car really rough and you have to keep replacing your axles because you keep hitting the curb all the time. But it's somebody who who can facilitate that in a way that helps you instead of demeaning. They rise, they lift people up around them, which gets us to the debate maker. Again, Debating in good faith, meaning to get a positive, productive answer, not simply to say, my opinion is right and you're wrong, and now I need to convince you why I'm right and you're wrong. And the reason that debate makers are so helpful is because they come from the realm of in good faith. I want to help us all find an answer, to help us all move forward. So if they can liberate you from ideas that are holding you down, and they can challenge you enough to help you see a different view of the problem in a different world, they bringing in a debate in good faith means that they're helping facilitate a conversation where you can understand the ideas around you and take advantage of the good ideas of everyone around you. So they are not a dictator. They do not impose. They do not try and convince no matter what. You feel free and that you feel liberated. You feel like they're helpful to you and you don't feel forced to follow down their path. It's the sign of a very good leader. And the last part is an investor. So if they see the good value, the true value, and know how to scope out people's true value and intentions, and they liberate them from what holds them back, and they can challenge them to consider new ideas and new ways of achieving their goals, and they can facilitate good conversation to open their mind up and actually get that information and know how to apply it. The last part is that all they do, or now do they say, what can I do to help you get there? On top of everything, noticing your value, coming up with ideas, helping you put a plan forward. Are they now actively involved in your success or not? That's the investor. So somebody with all these five traits are good, positive, well-known, well-liked leaders. And in a relationship, like I talked about earlier, between givers and takers, we need to serve each other in order to serve the relationship. So we need to lead each other because this person that we're going to be in a long-term committed relationship with, like Terrance has said before, and so to give him credit, this is the most dangerous person to you. The person you're going to open yourself up to, who's going to know your vulnerabilities. In a more criminal aspect, they're going to know where you sleep. They're going to know who the closest people are to you and your greatest vulnerabilities and how to use them against you. They're also going to know, if they're a good person, the best things about you and what can make you better. So, what can keep us away from problematic people is seeing whether they have these five traits, whether they're there for you, not just that they happen to be with you, and that there's a clear declaration of what we're doing together and why and moving forward. These are the signs of a good leader and a good partner and somebody who's really going to help us be the best person we can be. And at the same time, us embodying these traits helps us attract the same type of people. So, getting into our last part of this presentation is a book called Curious: The Desire to Know and Why, because your future depends on it. And I absolutely love this subtitle because you cannot stop being curious. There is no ultimate level of curiosity that once you've reached it, you can't go further. And that's what's beautiful about life, is that there's always something new to experience. And when we have a committed long-term relationship, what we're getting to have with that is a lifelong conversation and the ability to improve ourselves and seek out new opportunities, new hobbies, new experiences, and have that person there with us. And as we're growing together, we get to learn more about them because they're changing day by day, year by year, just like we are. But at the very beginning, we need to keep that magical curiosity before we fall in love with somebody, before we become with them, just to understand who is this person? And are they dangerous? Are they good for me? Do we want the same things? And we do it by being extremely curious about their character and their decision-making process and the history of their decisions. We should be curious about when they say that they have a dream or an idea. Let's be extra curious. Are they working on it? How are they working on it? If I tell you my dream is to own $1 million house, what is the next question? How are you going to do that? What's your plan? Do you know how much money you need to make? Do you know how you're going to make that money? What's the point of reaching that goal anyway? And somebody who really has a plan and wants to work on that will be able to tell you straight up. And they'll be able to tell you what they figured out, how they think they're going to do it. They're going to tell you what they haven't figured out yet. And they're going to tell you that about that day or that week or that month, what they've recently done to do it. So using that as an example, like, I wanted to go to the UK. I'm here with my family. Well, what did that mean? That means I need to buy a plane ticket for me and my wife. I need to set out a certain budget. I need to save for it. I need to take time off work. I need to tell my boss who's going to cover my stuff. And I need to work extra hard, right before I leave just to make sure everything isn't shoved on my coworker because him and I are buddies and I don't want to make his life worse. So there's a whole step of things that goes back a couple of months where I can lay it out clearly. So let's be extra curious and don't listen to what somebody says. Look at what they do. If we're not curious enough at the beginning, we get blindsided later on, and we might think that somebody has changed, but in reality, we weren't curious enough to see the signs of who they truly were. And of course, people can change, but when it comes from our point of view looking at somebody, the question is, well, how do I even know that they've changed and that this isn't the way they've been the entire time? So the way we teach this process is do everything at the beginning, constantly evaluate somebody, be extra curious, because it's not just what they do. It's not just the decisions they make, it's why they make those decisions. What is their meaning and purpose? Because if you cannot nail down their meaning and purpose or intent in being in a relationship with you, then the future is extremely unknown. It's unpredictable. And when things come up later, we feel blindsided. But we could have found out much earlier. And instead of spending a year, 2, 3 years and getting emotionally involved with somebody, very early on, we could have said, you may be bad, you may not be bad, but you're not right for me. And now all the effort that we're truly investing in somebody is at least somebody that we've done our best of our ability to say and determine we're on the same path in the same manner for the same or similar reasons. Because that type of relationship, when the going gets tough, people who serve each other and have all of that down aren't going to abandon each other. They're actually going to be loyal and they're going to help raise each other when they make mistakes and help propel them forward because it's what's best for them and the relationship together. Terrance, are you back? I'd like to let you say a few words on this before we move on to the next part. You're muted, my friend.
Look at that. I start the presentation and I forget that I'm muted. Beautiful. But but one of the things I want to add is this is one of the most important things to solve if you're single is do you have a healthy level of curiosity? I have so many clients who think they know the person they're attracted to, and they literally know very little, if anything. They know what they think that person is about, but a lot of times, especially men don't really know about women. Women don't really know about men. And what happens is we come up with these false declarations of knowledge that we never get from the actual people. So we're going off with all these strange conclusions, and we often just overcomplicate our lives because we really don't understand the person next to us. It's just like if I'm trying to connect with Ryan, so maybe I need to learn Arabic so I can speak his language. If he wants to connect with me, maybe I got to take him to Detroit so he can see where I grew up in, what I notice. And so many times, if we want a genuine connection, the difference between average and below average relationships and those extraordinary relationships is just essentially spending an extra 30 minutes to an hour a day learning about the type of people you think you want in your life because virtually no one does it. So if you do it when you're out and about, when you're in social gatherings, when you're conversing with other people, that knowledge will show. And a lot of times people will be unbelievably happy and want you around. And often that's where the relationship starts is, wow, this person actually did the due diligence to try to learn something. Wow, that's great. What else has this person known? And that's the starting point of the launching of to getting better relationship outcomes. It's just learning what you don't know and trying to figure out the things that you think you know, test them to make sure they're right. Because the most dangerous beliefs are those that are untested and wrong. That's why so many investigators they can't close cases. That's why so many of the issues happen in this world because we think we have answers to problems and that just creates more problems.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks everybody for attending. We're about to turn off the recording. I just have one more slide I need to get through. I will say this. I don't I'm gonna try my best to make it clear to the full community that we can only handle about 100 people at a time. I mean, it's just me, Ryan, and our wives who help us. That's it. There's no like large production team. It's just us. So, we
Hmm.
get comments, there's people falling in and out of the view room. And on this platform, uh, we had over 400 people try to hop on. So we try, we take the first that hop on, but if you're not able to view it, always remember we have our YouTube channel where we're gonna post this exact video. We're gonna post it. And then for somebody that wants the more in-depth stuff, which is the stuff I do behind the scenes, all the research and analytical stuff where we take these concepts to another level, you can join our free Patreon, and that's where a lot of the really important stuff is. And okay, that's good to know. I was gonna bring this up is if people that are more interested in having a more focal point in the community, just reach out to me or Ryan, because we're gonna be offering
Hmm.
workshops in the future. We have some workshops that are gonna really take this to the next level because this is what I do. This is my business. I love talking criminology. I love talking
Hmm.
profiling. And when I'm not working with clients or working with businesses, I'm working on this. I'm gonna go ahead and put the links to the Patreon and the YouTube in here. And again, I am very sorry if some people can't get in on, but this group is almost 5,000 members. This is actually the fastest growing group on Meetup. This is the number one group for relationships in the entire platform in America. Our SVPs and engagement just blow everybody off. And I appreciate everybody. But because of that, there's it's kind of difficult for everyone at a time to hop in. We're gonna see what we can do in the future, but as of right now, it's just the four of us. So, we're trying. Trust me, we're trying. All right, you can go to the next one. Okay, so again, engagement is increasing. With that said, if somebody has a question on the Patreon, that's the best way to reach out. We're keeping the Patreon free for a while, probably for the next 2 or 3 months, and then we'll, offer other stuff because we got to keep the lights on eventually. But on the Patreon, if you ask a question, please allow 24 to 48 hours because I work, Ryan's working. No, you ain't, Ryan, you ain't working. You just having fun in Europe. I'm taking your stipend, man.
Still working.
Oh,
I'm still working.
you're working, having fun. I don't believe it. So, but you know, it's only us two. We're the only ones answering these questions. So I end up getting probably 70 or 80 questions a day, aside from my actual career. So just if you're not feeling hurt after 24 hours, just trust me, we're gonna get to it. Patreon is becoming stable. We got 75 members already, and I'm going to put the link in the chat again because we're trying to grow. And what gets me is that there's so much information that I know and that I've been taught. There's so much information that Ryan has been taught, and a lot of the information about relationships and just people dynamics is regurgitated facts that have never been proven from people. Like I actually, a lot of the psychiatrists, especially the famous psychiatrists, whether you're talking about Freud or whatever, a lot of these people were highly unsuccessful in their own personal lives. You have people that are telling people about relationships and they were cheating on their wife their whole life. So, you know, I'm a big believer in learning about what's actually happening in 2025 and going out and testing stuff in the real world. And what you find is life is not nearly as complicated as we pretend themselves to be. Okay, so we have these five. These are going to be the next five presentations we're going to give. The one for next week is about love bombing because this has become very popular as this topic. I don't believe it's love bombing. I call it adult grooming because it mirrors a lot of the tactics used for pedophiles in grooming children. So I have a whole presentation on that, which hopefully by the time we're done, when we come across a love bomber, we just get the icky feeling. And if that happens, I know I did my job. The next one is we're going to go through the first two chapters of the book me and Ryan are writing called How to Choose a Man. And what this book is, it's going to be a very in-depth book about men for women. What is a lot of the conversations like? What is that process like of men determining when they're going to settle down? What should you look for? What are red flags? What are signs that you're dating for not potential but projection? So we're going to cover the first couple chapters on that. The book is going to be a lot more intensive, obviously, but I just read a bunch of books for women about men, and they were toilet water. So I was like, yo, I could write a better book than that in 2 months. So we're gonna go ahead and get that out there. The other one is he learned the game young, how Pokemon hustling and childhood trade shaped the upbringing of millennial men. This is going to be a presentation that's for everybody, but it's going to describe how specifically millennial men and Gen Z men have been exposed to extremely problematic influences. Whether it's the gambling nature of modern video games, this weird competitive nature that's turning a lot of men against each other, a lot of the role models we supposedly had growing up, we found out they were frauds. And there's just this life cycle. So especially especially if you're a single mother, you're trying to raise a child by yourself, this is also important because I'm going to touch on some of the most popular people and what is their real message. I'm even going to touch on there's apps that a lot of parents don't know about that's specifically target children. Their one was called Gas. The company was ended up being bought out by Discord, but it was an app that people legitimately sent.
Mm.
They would friend high school and middle school kids on Instagram, and they would get them into this app. And the app was a popularity app, so it was predicated on preying on children's their desire to fit in, and that's how the engagement rose. And it's just more and more. This is why it's so important to understand profiling and to understand these threat patterns because so many individuals look at people as a resource to extract money for or extract sexual desire for or all these other things. And these people work in the shadows, so we don't even know what they're up to. And again, as an investigator, I've had so many children lay out their entire life to me just because I just said, "Hey, I just want to hear. You have 2 hours, just tell me and I won't interrupt you." And they tell me everything. And it's so hurtful to me that in general so many of our relationships are fragmented. So we don't even know what's actually happening to other people in our, even the people closest to us, we don't know what they're going through. So that's I want to start that conversation. I'm also have the presentation how to find a wife for men. A lot of guys they don't know some of the basic things that women notice, such as something as simple as dirt under your fingernails. Women notice that. Women have a much more specialized sense of smell than men do. So there's so many things that men just don't know about women. And if you change a couple things in your life, you could completely change your life. And I got a lot of questions on this. So, love and dating and connection after 50. Ironically, my fastest growing group of people I work with are uh, widowers and divorcees after the age of 50. And I've had great success helping these individuals get married. A lot of them don't it's been so long since they've been dating, they kind of forgot how that process works. So I'm going to show you different techniques to get back out there, ways to immediately build rapport with, in those older years. So that's about it. And that's the end of the presentation.